I'd like to call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for February 16th, 2010. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these four considerations. A, relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. A sign variance may only be approved under the following circumstance: where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. This time I'd like to have the board members introduce themselves, starting to my right.
My name's Walt Recook.
Nancy Plesnarski.
Scott Kilgore.
Gary Willis.
Marcia Parsons.
Todd Chernick. John
Has everybody had a chance to look over the January meeting minutes? And if so, is there a motion to approve?
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for approval of the minutes for the February 16th, 2010 meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same motion. Let it be known that it passed 7-0. Our first consideration tonight is B09-019. Staff, would you please present? Is that the wrong one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, B10-002.
Very good.
Now, please present.
Sorry.
Let's see. Petition number V10-002, 325 Gunston Hall Circle. Requested variance is to allow an accessory structure, a staircase, to be located in a minimum side yard. The site, 325 Gunston Hall Circle, includes a single-family house on a 1.11 acre lot in the Providence Lake subdivision. The neighborhood is in the Northwest Fulton overlay. The topography drops steeply from the driveway to the back of the house, which borders a wooded area. Originally, the homeowners accessed the backyard via a set of stone steps that wound around the house and down the slope. It was discovered that the steps encroached onto the neighboring yard and they were removed. Mr. Thiel has been asked by the homeowner to construct a set of wooden steps leading from the driveway to the backyard. The steps will be 7.5 feet off the ground at their tallest point. The staircase will follow the existing retaining wall. The top landing will be at the property line within 25 feet within the 25-foot side yard setback. The attached pictures show an area along the edge of the top of the wall where the black iron fencing has been removed. The applicant indicates that the stairs will start here and then butt up against the wall as they traverse down the hill. He states that no trees will be removed due to this construction. Article 5.1.3.I, Section 64416I in Muni Code states that the accessory structures are allowed in the rear and side yards, but not in the minimum side yard. Therefore, the applicant is applying for a variance to allow the staircase in the minimum side yard. There was no DRB review, as this is a single-family use. Additional department comments, building plan review, site plan review, arborist, and DOT all had no issues. Standards for consideration. Relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. There are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done. The applicant addresses the considerations as follows. Relief, if granted, would not cause a detriment to the public good or surrounding properties, and it would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. Without these stairs, the only access to the backyard is all the way around the other side of the house or through the house, and that will cause the homeowner hardship in accessing the yard. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, stairs should be painted or stained the same color as the existing wood railing. And 2, shall install appropriate tree protection fencing per the city arborist prior to construction. This concludes the staff presentation.
Any questions from the board to staff? If not, I'd like to ask the applicant.
Over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Rico.
On the accessory use, so staircase is considered an accessory use, is that what I'm understanding? That's why it won't be allowed?
In this case, it's not attached to a deck or the house or a porch or anything. It's kind of standing alone, so it's considered an accessory use.
So,
Accessory structure, yeah.
okay, and there's nothing else that can be done. It's, if they put a deck and before the steps went down, and the deck was a 2x2,
Well, then there are some qualifications about how far the deck can go into the side yard setback. I think there's a maximum that it can encroach.
and what kind of encroachment are we looking at into the side yard setback?
The landing of the stairs starts at the property line.
Okay, so basically
It's
everything.
in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is the retaining wall butting against the property line also?
It is, but the retaining walls can actually go in the setback.
Any other questions for staff? Now, if the applicant would like to come forward and present, please give us your name and address before you start, please.
My name is Barton Thiel. I live at 1188 Lanier Springs Drive in Beaufort, Georgia. I'm the carpenter that was hired to build the staircase. Because of the way the lot sits, the builder was forced to build the house all the way against, as far as he could, to one side of the property, and the edge of the driveway rides the property line all the way back, and at the end of the driveway, it literally is like 7 or 8 feet off the ground, and pretty much the whole back side of the driveway would be within the setback. So even if we had tried to build it, the stairs closer to the house itself and run them the opposite way, it would still be within the setback. And then if anybody has seen out there, there's a sandbox on the very end of the driveway, way down below, that the actual lower landing will be adjacent to. And if we tried to build it off the side where the house was itself, we'd have all of our support posts in the middle of the children's sandbox. So it just seemed the logical place to run the stairs. And they will be built identical to match what is existing on the property. And after a 30-day drying period, they will be stained to match the existing railing that is there. And other than that, Angela summed things up wonderfully as to why we're asking to do this.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Yes, sir.
Do you have any letters from your adjoining neighbors saying that they are in opposition or in agreement with allowing this to occur?
I believe the Mark Coleman, the previous owner, because this was an issue that came up when the house was going to close. I had spoken to somebody, and they said that in this scenario that a neighboring letter wasn't necessary, but the neighbor had no opposition to it, as far as I know.
Well, then, if there was no opposition, why did the neighbor make the steps that were there get removed? Was it just purely a conflict of closing?
Because the stairs were actually on his property, and from my understanding, the lending company would not allow the loan to go through as long as portions of their yard, and other than the steps itself, there was also a swing that was over it, and all of that had to be removed. Looking at the site, I can understand why the previous resident ran the stairs there, because it really does look like their yard, and I might have made the same mistake had it been my home as well. But of course, when the surveys come out and they hang the little string, and then you know where the property really is. And sure enough, everything he had built was completely and entirely off of his property. And I believe there was some, and I get most of my information from the real estate agent, so it is a little bit secondhand. But there was also, I guess, an issue with, they had asked if the neighbor was willing to sell a portion of the land, and it ended up being, I guess, too much time consuming. But to my knowledge, the neighbor has no objections to, as long as we are on now the Hoy's property. As long as we stay on the property, they're okay with it. They just, I guess, wanted the access off of theirs.
By the number of the neighbors that are in the audience, I can understand.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thiel, seeing as how these new stairs are going to go in an area pretty close to where the previous ones were, what steps have you taken to ensure that they're not going to make the same mistake? And wind up-
The property line is actually still staked, and we pull strings, and I'm not sure if you can see a sketch of that shows the property line. The property line stays in a straight line with the side of the driveway, where the driveway flares to its widest, and we're going to be entirely on the back side of that, where the angle is like 45, and we will remain entirely within the property. But we have it still staked from the original survey, and we'll make sure that we're definitely within the property line. It's only the furthest most point of the landing that is right there at the property line, and that's where we're going to attach to the existing railing, just to give it some continuity.
As far as you know, is the neighbor that is currently in the home adjacent to the property in question the same one that was there when the stairs were torn down previously?
Yes. As far as I know, that home has not changed hands in a while.
Mr. Triple.
Regarding the neighbor, that house is occupied at the moment? They're living
Yes,
in
it
the
is.
house? And I assume, a question for Angela, I assume our blue sign has been posted for the
Yes.
last month, so the neighbor had ample
Letters,
opportunity to
yes.
see it.
It was just to the left of the driveway, if you were out there.
Yes, ma'am?
Could you tell me how wide your stairs are going to be?
I believe at their narrowest, because they do step a little bit, they jog. Most of the way down, it'll be 48 inches, but where we are adjacent to the playground, I think it drops down to 42.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This time I'd like to open up the floor for public comment, if anybody'd like to make a comment. Seeing none, You do have an opportunity to have a closing statement. If you'd like to make one, that is strictly up to you. Okay. This time, I'd like to close the public hearing. Any additional questions for staff? At this time, would anybody like to make a motion? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion for approval for V10-02 to allow an accessory structure to be located in the minimum side yard setback. And basically, I feel like if granting relief will not offend the spirit of the intent of the ordinance. I believe that the topography of the site, as well as the location of the property and the need for steps being outside the going onto the neighbor's property is best that it is done. But I would ask for conditions. Those conditions would be that the stairs shall be painted and stained the same color as the existing wooden rail on the property, and they shall also install appropriate tree protection fence for the city arborist prior to construction.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? The motion on the floor is to allow an accessory structure staircase to be located in a minimum side yard with the following conditions. 1, stairs shall be painted, stained the same color as the existing wood railing. And 2, install appropriate tree protection fencing per city arborist prior to construction. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Same. Let it be known that it passed 7-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Well, I guess I called to find out who I contacted about the tree protection. Well, very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next agenda item is V10-003. Angela, will you please present?
Petition number V10-003, 1695 Birmingham Highway. The requested variance is as follows: to allow a private recreational court to be located in a front yard. The background: the site, 1695 Birmingham Highway, includes a single-family home which sits on 10 acres. The property is located in the Northwest Fulton overlay. A landscape berm has been constructed along the frontage of the property, and the house sits back 237 feet from Birmingham Road. The applicant, John Pearson, contracted to have concrete poured for a 75 by 46 basketball court and the foundation for a nearby shed. However, he did not obtain a building permit before the work began. The court sits in front of the house, 163.62 feet from Birmingham Road, on a raised landscaped area. On January 15, 2010, Inspector Mark Arral noticed work being done on the property. When he inquired about the required permit, the contractor informed him that he did not have one. Mark issued a stop work order and advised the contractor to obtain the building permit from the City of Milton. The court is currently half completed. Article 19.3.8b1, Section 64-1602 in Muni Code, states that the private recreational courts serving single-family detached dwellings shall be located in the side and rear yards, but not be located within a minimum yard. The area from the right-of-way to the front plane of the house is considered the front yard. Mr. Pearson is asking for variance to allow the court to remain in the front yard. There's no DRB review, as this is a single-family use. Staff held a focus meeting on February 3rd, at which the following comments were provided. Building plan review, site plan review, arborist and DOT had no issues. Standards for consideration. The approval of a variance is based on the following considerations. Relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. There are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done. The applicant addresses the considerations as follows. Mr. Pearson indicates that he located the court in an underutilized area of his yard, previously occupied by an oak tree which was lost to disease about a year ago. The house is set back a great distance from the road, and the grade falls off rapidly into the floodplain behind it. Other areas are not suitable because of stream buffers or grade issues. The applicant wanted to avoid the large trees to the right of the house, and there are drainage and septic pipes behind the house. The applicant states that the spirit of the ordinance will not be offended in this case because of the substantial distance from the road and neighbors' houses. He believes that granting this variance will have no negative effect on the environment, surrounding area, nor the public good. He has obtained a signed letter from his immediate neighbors stating that they have no objection to the basketball court. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain a building permit and pay all applicable fees and penalties for starting work without a permit, and no lighting shall be installed around this court. This concludes the staff presentation.
Any questions from the board to staff? Mr. Cherney?
I have one question. There's mention made regarding a foundation for a shed.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that, and will there also be a variance required for that?
The shed, if you look on your site plan, just makes it out of the front yard. It's parallel, it's in line with that plane of the house. If you look at the front corner of the house, you'll need to get a building permit for it. And you can kind of see it in one of your pictures, just the foundation. On page 12, that top picture behind the tree, that's the location of the shed where that tractor is sitting.
So the applicant will need to get a building permit for that?
Right.
Okay. No variance is required?
No.
Mr. Rico?
Two questions. So there is no variance required for the accessory building, that shed does not?
It's just out of the front setback.
Okay, and can you read me the letter the applicant submitted? I cannot read my copy of the letter, and I don't want to minimize it, but that's a letter that I just can't read. I know I'm getting old, but
It's tiny.
Dig it out.
You might have the original.
Yeah, I have it. January 25th, 2010, regarding variance application 1695 Birmingham Road to the City of Milton Zoning Board. I have asked all neighbors potentially affected for their thoughts on my basketball court, and all have said they have
Okay,
no.
we could read that one, the one before it.
Oh, the letter of appeal?
yeah,
The letter of intent?
that's the one I could not read. I kind of got that one.
Turns out this letter is written, but that's about all I could read.
Okay, February 10th, 2010, City of Milton Zoning Board, variance application for 1695 Birmingham Road. This letter is written as part of a variance application for a basketball court to be located in a minimum yard on my 10-acre home site. Although we have a large piece of property, there are few locations that will allow for a basketball court. We placed the house as far from the road as possible, but as you can see on the foundation survey and topographical map, the grade falls off rapidly into the floodplain. Many areas are not suitable because of the stream buffers or grade issues. There are large trees to the right of the house that I don't want to affect, and the rear of the house is wet, as drainage pipes traversing in a septic field. In addition, there is no way to get concrete to these low-lying areas. As it happens, I have a raised area to the front right of my home that is perfect for the court. Unfortunately, I lost a large oak tree from disease in that location about a year ago, and it was approved for removal by Mark Law. Since then, this area has been underutilized and full of weeds. This became an obvious location for a ball court for our kids and their friends to play. My variance application is retrospective since I was not aware that I needed approval for a ball court. I have halted the project half completed pending approval from the board. I understand the ordinance is in place primarily for neighborhoods or where neighbors who live in close proximity to each other could be negatively affected by such a structure in close proximity to their home. I believe our situation is unique, and the spirit of the ordinance will not be offended in this case because of the substantial distance from the road and the neighbors' houses. I believe granting this variance will have no negative effect on the environment, surrounding area, and certainly not the public good. To support this, I have obtained consent from my immediate neighbors and have included signatures from each of them with addresses and contact information. If relief was not granted, this would impose a substantial hardship in many ways. The removal of existing concrete would cause further disruption to the ground immediately involved in addition to the trauma that the surrounding yard would suffer dealing with dump trucks, etc. The area would continue to be underutilized, as I cannot see any other purpose to be served. It will also deny our children an enjoyable play area that we feel we have a right to, given the above. Special care to planning around the area will continue, but already the site is invisible from the road. I have included pictures showing this area is blocked by fencing, vegetation, and a large berm. Sincerely yours, John Pearson.
Thank you. And do we know for sure it is visible from the street? I know you took pictures and.
I couldn't see it,
I
and
didn't
actually I
see
walked
it.
by
It
it
was right
on the property and didn't see it at first.
I didn't see it either.
Mr. Kilgore?
Yeah, we had a
Yeah.
discussion,
If
but
you're
I'll just
looking
address your
here.
question. From a sedan, you can't see over the berm. I think from a taller vehicle, you probably could just barely see the surface of the court above the berm, and then it's raised above its own berm.
Sure.
So it's pretty well screened with the landscaping around it.
Well, that's why I asked. I'm in a
It's just
pickup truck, so
barely-
I have
Yeah.
probably a 15% advantage over, well, maybe in this community, maybe more like 20%. But most people aren't higher vehicles, but.
You can just barely see it. And it's only a glimpse.
Any additional questions for staff? If the applicant would please come forward and present, and if you would state your name and address on the record, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I'm Don Rollator. My address is 11660 Alpharetta Highway, Suite 630, Roswell, Georgia. I'm here representing Dr. Pearson tonight. If I cough and whack and sneeze and carry on, please forgive me. I've had a dry cough for 3 weeks, and the best minds in medicine haven't been able to cure it yet, so bear with me if I get into that. Dr. Pearson has lived on this property since 1996. He and his wife bought the property and built the house sometime back. Since then, they've had 2 children. They have a little boy who's 6 and a little girl who's 2. It's a big lot. It's 10 acres in size, and as the staff reported to you, it's 237 feet from the street to the front of the house. In addition to that, they wanted their privacy as well as their neighbors, and they constructed a 4-foot landscape berm along the right-of-way of Birmingham Road at the time the house was built, and it's vegetated, and it makes for a lovely home site. Unless you've got Walt's pickup truck, it's hard to see much of the house from the road except the roof line. The property drops away, and they chose to build the house at the very back of the flat part of the property. You get to that flat part, and then it drops away from there, and there's a lake back behind their property, a very pretty lake on back there. But they have creeks and stream beds and specimen trees and lots of wonderful things to the rear of the house. Interestingly enough, the building setback line in that district is 60 feet. I guess they could have built the house within 60 feet of the street if they chose. We wanted to stop at this point, and Dr. Pearson wanted to express his gratitude to each member of the City of Milton staff that he's come in contact with since this issue arose. From his first contact to the people he dealt with in the office to everybody else, they've been exceptionally kind and considerate. That's to be noted. It's not always common in North Fulton that a homeowner gets that comfortable a feeling. They're very well treated, and they appreciate it sincerely. The entire relationship has been good. In further explanation of that, Dr. Pearson doesn't consider himself a common criminal. He said, I had absolutely no idea I needed a permit or a variance to build a basketball court for Nicholas, and if I had, I doggone sure wouldn't have broken the law. When they came up and addressed the issue with him and told him about it, he directed his contractors to stop at that point in time, and all development on the property has been arrested since then. For understanding's sake, the court's half in. The half closest to the house is poured and finished. The 6-foot basketball goal for Nicholas is there. The half farther away and closer to his neighbor has not been finished, and that development has been halted pending your understanding. Further, at the time he did this development, he went in and placed silt fencing and other things that you would usually do in order to make sure that he had no impact on his neighbors. The most important thing he did is talk to the 3 neighbors that are most affected, left side, right side, and straight across the street. Each of those neighbors is perfectly happy with what he proposes to do, and they have signed the form that's in your packet. So there's no neighborhood issue with what he has done. Basically, Dr. Pearson needs your help. It would be a hardship to attempt to build the court anywhere else. 10 acres sounds like an awful lot. But when you look at the house and where it sits, everything to the other side of the driveway falls away. And there's a creek line through there and probably some floodplain. To the rear of the driveway side of the house, same story. All around the house, they laid the water lines, the electric lines, the septic tank lines go to the back. It would be interesting to drive a concrete truck across there and see what you might break. The other side of the house is a beautiful set of trees, and that land behind this court drops away back to the creek bed. Dr. Pearson estimates that there are innumerable specimen trees in that area, which he would have to tear down if he stepped back and moved the court backwards into that area. So from a practical standpoint, it's much more impactful on the property to move the court than it is to allow it to be built where it is. The topography, I think, is one of the more important things we would note. The impact on the existing systems from the house. Basically, the court is far from the right-of-way of Birmingham Road. It's located behind a berm, and it's not readily visible from the road. It doesn't have any negative impact on the community. That, combined with the neighbor's consent, I think makes it reasonable to consider giving Dr. Pearson this variance on this property. There are good reasons. There's no negative impact. There's no harm to the community. If you look at Walt Recutt and I used to deal with all the time, the health, safety, and welfare of the public of the city of Milton, Georgia, there's no negative impact there. I think what we have is a good first effort at an ordinance, but that ordinance is intended to try and include every residential lot in the city of Milton. And Milton is a very unique city in that where you run from small quarter-acre or 0 lot line lots to 10 and 15, 20-acre parcels. I think as the city goes along in its life, you may find that there will be some amendments and some tweaking to this ordinance to make it less vague and more directive so that a person with a 10-acre lot is not living under exactly the same rule as a person with a quarter-acre lot would be. But it's fine for what we've got now. Understand the issue. More importantly, the doctor appreciates the kindness of the people he's been involved with, and he would like the opportunity to complete this basketball court where it exists. Like I say, the negatives are virtually non-existent. The positives are that within a week or two, Nicholas, I guess, is ready to hit the court on his way to Cameron Indoor Stadium when he becomes a world-class basketball player after a trip through Milton High School, the 5A champions. I'm dumbfounded. I'll take a minute to advertise. My son played at Milton High School, varsity player. His senior year, they were 1-22, but they beat Roswell. It was a successful year. To watch Milton win the state championship was an unbelievable thrill to me. It's fun. But anyway, simply stated, we think that what we're asking for here is entirely reasonable. He didn't mean to harm anybody. He didn't mean to violate the law. The people he's dealt with have been most kind, and he would like for you to consider granting him the opportunity to go forward and finish this project. If you have any questions of either one of us, we're happy to answer them. I filled out a card so Doc could talk. He said he'd rather practice emergency room medicine than speak in front of a crowd, so if you'll pick on him gently, we'll appreciate it. But thank you for your time, and please let us know what questions you have and if we may answer them. Thank you.
Any questions from the board to the applicant? Yes, sir.
First thing, in front of the court, it looks like there's some shrubs that were planted or were in the process of being planted.
he built a berm around the basketball court.
Well, that's what I was going to try to understand
Yeah.
is there a plan or is there an intent to continue that or remove it? I mean, that's something that's important for me to understand is that going to be staying or
I think, and I'll ask Dr. Pearson to correct me if I'm misquoted, that he created that the berm at the time he created the concept of the basketball court, so not only would it be hidden from the neighbors, but it wouldn't be too visible from his very own house. But safely, let me let him respond to it. That's probably better.
I can address that further.
You gotta touch the mic.
Okay. The area where the court is was an area there was a tree there, and I wanted to save that tree. And when we graded the property, we kept that whole area at the original grade. So we took some dirt around from all sides of it, but we kept this big area. And this tree got some disease and died, so we were just left with an area that was already raised several feet. And so it slopes down on all the sides, and I had already planted around there. But where the canopy of the tree was, there was nothing planted because it couldn't live. So now that tree was gone, and now I was left with this large area that was unplanted in the center. And that's where the court went. And I have done some additional planting even since this court was created with the primary intention of continuing to screen the area, not only visually, but for balls when they roll off, they don't roll 50 feet, they run into plants. So it's fully planted, and that will stay that way. It's all of this exposed ground has been covered with pine straw, and it's so there were some plants that were removed, and just enough so I could recreate the slope and have appropriate slope, but everything's been replanted.
so again, your intent is to keep it screened and particularly screen it perhaps even better along Birmingham Highway. It seems like your neighbor across the street probably has the best view of the court, except for maybe your second story window. But that's probably the best one. And if you plant something there to get higher, but again,
you may see there. Do you have the pictures available this year? And I put a line of magnolias that are going to get huge along that side.
Sure.
And
well, I grew up in a family of 3 boys and a boatload of kids, so everybody played. But our basketball court was right next to our neighbor's house, and I don't think we disturbed them too much because they all came over and played. But
I've already have neighbors coming over, and my son played an upward basketball for his first time this year, and we had his team over there, and we all played and practiced, and it's a ton of fun. And I can't imagine having to tell him or explain to him that we'd have to reverse this situation.
Yes, ma'am?
One of the recommendations of staff is that no lighting shall be installed. I'm wondering if you still want some pathway lighting around there for security at night. I'm sure they were thinking of tall lights.
Yeah, I have on the property. I have low voltage lighting on the berm in various areas, and I would assume that prohibition wouldn't include low voltage landscape lighting. At this time, I don't actually have plans to do that. It sounds like a good idea, but I certainly have no plans for high voltage lighting that clearly would be seen from the road.
So it'd be low voltage only?
The conditions are all acceptable to the applicant. I forgot to add that during the presentation.
I just want to make sure if he did want that, we're not excluding him from doing that.
Yes, sir.
Any plans for fencing around the court that would be visible from the road?
I don't have plans to do that. I thought about it from the only benefit would be to keep, because it is raised when the balls do go off the side they go, and what I'm trying to do is use planting that's dense enough and evergreen to actually provide that screen rather than fencing. So I have no plans to put a fence.
So if we were to include a condition on no fencing, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
Just make sure you're not subject to any homeowners association.
I'm not.
Any additional questions for the applicant? As there's no public comment, we'll close public comment. You do have a chance for a closing statement if you'd like to make one.
No, I don't want to take your time and bear down on you with that. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them. Other than that, we'll close. Thank you so much.
Any additional questions for staff? At this time, the floor is open for a motion. Mr. Recook?
I'd like to make a motion for approval of V10-003. This is to allow a private recreation court to be located in a front yard with recommended conditions being the applicant shall obtain a building permit and pay all applicable fees and penalties for starting work without a permit. Number 2, no lighting shall be installed around the court, but that would exclude lighting to the court. And then 3rd would be no fencing around the court. The reason for my recommendation is that I feel that relief if granted would be not offending the spirit or intent of the ordinance, that this is a situation where it's a 10-acre piece of property. This looks like the best location to have the court, and if relief is granted will cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties as evident by the letter from the homeowners, and then the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, because I don't believe a basketball court would endanger anyone. In fact, it would probably do them some good.
I'll second. Any discussion? Yes, sir?
Can you clarify, Walt, what, the point you made regarding the lighting?
Correct. That lighting shall not be installed around the court, but would exclude lighting to the court. In other words, that way if they had to put lighting to
They have lighting on the court, though.
Oh, you mean like pathway lighting?
pathway lighting.
Can-
And if you want me to say that, I'll be glad to.
Well, I was thinking of something to be made more clear is just no overhead lighting.
Well, I didn't want to
Pathway
say
lighting
that.
wouldn't be overhead.
Well, it could be. I mean, what I'm saying is I know Sawney EMC could put some type of light out there and, you know, it might shine from the driveway over.
Well, that would be overhead, that's what I would.
Right, but it wouldn't be at the tennis, wouldn't be at the basketball court, it might be by the driveway. It would shine that way. I'm not saying that's recommended, but I'm saying the lighting to the court, you know, if you want to say pathway lighting,
No overhead lighting around the court.
What about low voltage? Just limit it to low voltage?
yeah, that may be a better way to say it, is that no lighting shall be installed around the court and low voltage lighting will be allowed to the court. I'm just trying to say if there's some possibility, and I'll be honest, I'm not against lighting, even if it wasn't low voltage. If you had little carriage lanterns, heck, I've got one in my own front yard that if you had 3 of them, I'm not sure that would be a detriment to the community. It would, I mean, that's why I wasn't real strong on the lighting, because I just felt like lighting, getting it to the court. But also you have to understand, why would you need lighting to the court if you don't have lighting on the court at night? The only reason is if, you know, you kind of hang out there. I mean, that's eventually what's going to happen if you don't have lighting. That's where the kids will hang out at night, especially as they get older. So
You might want light.
so that's why a little bit of lighting may not hurt in the long run, but that's why I was thinking walkway lighting. And that's why they want to be specific, because, again, if they had carriage lanterns or whatever, 3 or 4 of them, it wouldn't bother me. And,
Let's say walkway lighting.
And I think that's what I said.
Walkway lighting is allowable.
correct, and that's what I said. I said lighting.
What
Let's
did you
let's
say?
just make a clean amendment.
Yeah, let's make it
Yeah,
clean.
withdraw.
ahead.
Can you withdraw
No
yours?
overhead.
Withdraw your motion.
Well, you can,
You can amend it.
yeah, we can let the motion stand and then we move to amend. So we've got a motion and a second.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
I did. The walkway lighting will be approved, will be
Well,
acceptable.
we're gonna move to amend to strike the second one and then
Can I just
propose it.
throw my 2
Propose
cents
it.
in before we go down that path? I mean, the variance being requested is verbatim to allow a private recreational court to be located in a front yard. In his variance request, there's no mention of lighting. His attorney mentioned that he's not he's perfectly fine with recommended conditions as stated in our packet, and to constrain or to further allow any additional lighting or anything on top of the variance that's being requested, I don't think is necessary. The conditions as stated, the applicant's okay with.
And the way it's worded, like
No lighting shall be
around the
installed around the
court
court.
would not be a walkway
That would
lighting,
be a
so I don't think
perimeter
we're,
thing that would be visible from the red.
we're
I don't
not,
think we need to
precluding
Around
dress
is
up as big
around,
anymore.
around is big,
Yeah.
around could be anything.
And is lighting an issue under the zoning? Can they put lighting there without any special allowance?
Well,
Or
we have the night sky ordinance, so I'd have to look at that for the specifics, but
There's
probably
not even a pathway mentioned
not.
here, so. I mean, we're designing his backyard for him at a certain point, and I'm not sure that that's what's necessary in this variance
Front
request.
well, I have no problem just removing it.
Well, my only concern here is because staff wanted to make sure that we included no lighting shall be installed. I hate to go over staff's
Yeah, no.
recommendation and at least
Right.
put something in here because they've asked us to do that. And I think since they've asked us, I think we should follow through and do what the city would like us to do.
Question, John, you're not saying we strike the second, you're just saying just take the
I'm saying
wording
we
as
take
it
the
is.
recommended conditions
Which I
as
think you
stated
said.
that the applicants agreed to, and I believe staff, I mean, it's what they wrote, so, you know.
Can staff
trust that
comment on
they're
their
all right.
comment?
I just didn't want the big overhead lights shining in the middle of the yard that you could see from the road. I would feel landscape lighting would be acceptable. There's no path, so you don't necessarily need pathway lighting, but I mean, I would think landscape, the traditional landscape lighting would be fine.
And that's in compliance with our zoning regulations on the books now, so there's no issue, there's no variance needed.
Would they have to come before the city and ask for any lighting
No,
package?
no, they can
So let me
Would we
just
make that a
remove that.
condition? Would that be a condition that we could just say that it would have to be approved by staff?
I mean, I think just to say that, what did I say?
We don't muck it up?
Just to not light the court, you know.
That's all.
I mean, if you wanted to
Okay.
clarify
Yeah,
that,
I understand.
no lighting should be
Yeah, I
installed around the court.
As of motorists.
But the way it says here, you can't even.
No,
do
it says
that.
no light shall be installed around the court. Around the court.
I mean, you can say
not
that the
path
court
leading
shall not be
to it.
illuminated if you wanted to be more
Okay.
specific. I
Okay.
mean, that's what I was going
The
for.
court shall not be illuminated?
Yeah, and I disagree. I say just remove it, John. I mean, I think just remove that last statement, just leave it like it is. And the only thing, add no fencing around the court and leave it at that.
So could we clarify what we're going to, what the motion is?
I was going to review the motion, and just basically say no lighting shall be installed around the court, period. And the next sentence would be no fencing around the court, period. And I would read the first statement as is.
Okay.
But I have a problem with around, because around is a very general term. It could be around the landscaping, around the court, or, you know, how far out is around the court? So, you know, is it the berm? Does he want to shine lights up on the tree?
He already
You know?
has it in the berm.
I think we've heard it from staff, though, that they're not going to misconstrue this, and it's staff that we're worried about interpreting our ruling on this. And as long as staff is not going to misconstrue this condition, staff wrote the condition, and they verified that what they meant was
Yeah.
court lighting of the courts. I
Could
think we're
we,
going to be penalizing the applicant.
You want to say over the court? Is that what you prefer?
Angela recommended court shall not be illuminated.
Right.
So,
But
I
why
mean,
would you
yeah,
say
I mean,
that?
how about we go with that, the not to illuminate the court, because that was the
Would
intent.
that be all right?
I think that would clarify it.
That's true.
Walt, is that all right with you?
So no, what is it, tiki lamps either? No.
That's not illuminating the court.
That's not illuminating the court.
Candles are
All right,
illuminated.
any other discussion before I reread the motion?
No.
We need a
Okay.
candle
Okay.
wattage.
The motion on the floor is to approve V10-003 to allow a private recreational court to be located in a front yard with the following conditions. Number one, applicant shall obtain a building permit and pay all applicable fees and penalties for starting work without a permit. Two, the court shall not be illuminated. And three, no fencing allowed around the court.
I'll second the motion. Do we have to withdraw the first one and then second
No,
that?
I think he was just restating the
Rereading it.
motion. in response to our discussion, right?
Well, I'll second the motion to revise it as you said it.
Any discussion on the new motion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same. Let it be known that it passed 7-0. Good luck. We're all going to come over and play basketball.
I know.
Where's the pool?
Dr. Pierce, don't put up one more question. You've got some rocks right by your front driveway. I know you've got them there for a reason, to keep people from driving off the road. They're dangerous as hell. I didn't, excuse me?
Buy artificial rocks that are hollow and put them there until they look like rocks.
I'll just tell you, if you put low shrubs or whatever, I mean, that'll still keep the cars away, like you're doing the plants. In my old traffic engineer days, I worked enough fatal accidents. I just hate for someone to make a little accident
Well,
and drive.
point of order, my friend. Let's not redesign this whole French yard. Let's let the city of Milton Police do that. Any other business before we close?
It was beautiful, you heard. I couldn't see anything there.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. We're closed.
Hey, how does our calendar look